So I've separated today's video into three primary parts. We have the chakra system, which I want to touch on a little bit, simple jutsu, and then we have complex jutsu. Simple jutsu are things like basic clones, replacement jutsu, transform, etc. Basically jutsu that anyone can do, and often the kind of thing they learn as children in their respective ninja schools. Complex jutsu are things like the Rasengan, Edo Tensei, Amaterasu, etc. These jutsu can only be performed by a select few due to their abnormal difficulty in properly executing, or in some cases because they're really truly powerful. So first things first, let's talk about chakra and how magic systems with variable range are extremely difficult to work around. Let me explain. Shikamaru and Kakashi don't have very much chakra. Shino and Ino have an unknown amount of chakra. Naruto and Kiba have a lot of chakra. Just giving vague descriptors on how much chakra someone has actually leads to some silliness in regards to plot development. Because while Kiba has a lot of chakra, that's a true statement, he can't even come close to comparing to Naruto. But it's still true to say that Naruto and Kiba have a lot of chakra. Now let's just conjure up a meter that maxes out at 100. Characters like Naruto would be 100, and then characters like Shikamaru or Kakashi might be closer to 5 or 10. So then you'd have to fit all the other characters in that range between. But I think that Naruto's chakra design works like the Richter scale. If you don't know what that is, it's the measurement for the strength of an earthquake. The Richter scale isn't like a weight scale. It doesn't just uniformly get more severe as you increase the numbers. It does exponential jumps with each number. For example, an earthquake magnitude 6 can cause damage to buildings, but 9 would destroy everything. If Naruto were a 100 on this hypothetical scale, then Kiba could still be a 60 and not be just over half as strong as Naruto. He would be exponentially weaker. But we don't have these exact scales for the characters in Naruto. All we know is that Jinchurikis have more chakra via their jailed beasts, and certain clans like the Uzumaki clan have more chakra. In a way, Naruto's a walking talking cheat code because he has nearly limitless chakra from various sources in his life. But anyway, the reason I bring up any of this is because we have simple and complex jutsu that various characters constantly use. We know, for example, that Kakashi can use the Raikiri. Based on that, we also know in part 1, Kakashi could only pull off 4 Raikiris a day. So technically, if we look at abilities like the Raikiri and the Rasengan and similarly powerful abilities, we can actually create a scale of power. Let's call this scale the Raikiri scale. In part 1, Kakashi is 4 Raikiri strong, while Sasuke is 2 to 3 Raikiri strong. And Naruto is probably in the range of 2 to 3 Raikiri as well, considering their very close match at the Valley of the End. Naruto obviously has more chakra than that, but chakra that he can readily call upon might be far more strict at that point in the story. Though he's been known to summon 1,000 clones, that's still a big accomplishment in part 1. So if Naruto and Sasuke are the strongest of the Konoha 12 during part 1, then it's safe to assume that everyone else is 0 to 2 Raikiri strong. And now we have an easy system to base everyone's power off of. It's a silly system, but it works. The reason I want some semblance of a system is because I hate when people make arbitrary claims like Ichigo can move at supersonic speeds compared to the lackluster subsonic speeds of Rukia. I know data books share weird knowledge like that, but trying to parse the difference between supersonic speed and subsonic speed is like trying to explain the number trillion to someone. It's too big a number and our brains just can't properly quantify it. We know how many zeros it has, but if you put 1 trillion of anything in front of a person, they'd never be able to guess 1 trillion. So using variable extreme speeds as odd measurements for comparing the power of characters, for example, only really muddies the water. So with this silly Raikiri system, I think we can more easily quantify the strength of not just other ninja, but the difficulty and power of all other jutsu. Anything that uses or has chakra can fit into this Raikiri system. The reason it's important to have some sort of scale here is because we don't want characters to be able to prolifically spam complex abilities with seemingly little to no cost. Chakra control as well could also fit on this scale. If Sakura is a 3 out of 3 for chakra control, and Naruto in Part 1 canon is a 0 out of 3, then we can overlap both scales. If Sakura's chakra level was 0 Raikiri, then perhaps with a 3 out of 3 chakra control, she'd be a 3 Raikiri. So chakra control is an artificial modifier to how many Raikiri someone is. And let's say if your control is 0 to 1, it's added onto your Raikiri, but if it's 2 to 3, it's multiplied by your Raikiri. And with our system in place, we can now properly decide what someone or what ability is capable of. So let's move on to simple jutsu. Transformation jutsu. This is obviously one of the most basic jutsu we ever see. Children do this as part of school tests, and these kids are 11 to 12 years old. So it's a safe estimate to say most of these simple jutsu are going to be less than 0.1 Raikiri. But what about the jutsu itself? Is it too strong, too weak, poorly used, too boring? I think it wasn't used enough in Naruto canon simply because these are ninja. There's that classic image of Itachi squatting on the electric post over the massacre of the Uchiha clan. That image is in itself the most ninja picture in all of Naruto. When we think of ninja, we think of men dressed in all black, jumping across rooftops, being practically invisible, and most prominently perhaps, being deceptive. I think for us to remain true to the ninja calling, the transformation jutsu needs to not only stay in, but chiefly not change. Naruto wasn't the first story to use substitution jutsu, but that doesn't mean it's a clever or logical ability. It's funny, but it basically allows teleportation for the user. Oops, now I'm in a tree 30 feet away and no one saw me get there in broad daylight. That just doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. So I'm axing it. No more substitution jutsu. Clone jutsu. This one's weird. Obviously it's a flagship ability in Naruto, but I just want to go over some glaring issues I have with it. Whenever Naruto makes clones, whoever he's fighting against seems to forget who the original body was that conjured the clones, even though they all appeared around the original body. So this is kind of deceptive. Are we meant to think that the second he conjures even one clone, he's able to, in that instant, trade places with one of these clones, thereby tricking the enemy as to where he is? So this one has an easy answer. If my question is true, then I'm removing that aspect of clones. If you can trade places instantly with one of your clones upon their creation, then you can't do that in my rewrite. I'm basically trying to eliminate any teleportation type shenanigans. Also, something that I'm adding in is some basic elemental jutsu. This isn't Avatar: The Last Airbender where elements are owned by certain countries. This is Naruto, where every single human being is born with any one of the 5 chakra natures. So it only makes sense to me that their school would teach them not only their first chakra nature, which is big, but also basic abilities of that element. It might seem overly complex for academy learning, but Sasuke learns that he's fire and lightning before the Chunin exams end, and that's not long at all after the stories start. Small note that my story is during a Cold War. There'd be more emphasis on getting stronger sooner, and that includes education. These are things that we often see in canon, such as Mudwall Jutsu or the Water Spout Jutsu, or even some variety of the Fireball Jutsu. This both expands on what we'll see characters performing, thereby keeping fights more dynamic, but also it'll help to highlight which characters favor which elements. I would also make a point to say that while simple jutsu are probably about 0.1 Raikiri, basic nature jutsu is maybe a 0.25. So if Choji is a 2 Raikiri plus 1 control, then he'd be able to pump out 12 nature jutsu before exhausting his chakra. I hope this at least makes some kind of sense, because obviously it'll make more sense to the guy that's made it up. If the simple jutsu are E rank, then these basic nature jutsu would be D rank. just as in terms of mission difficulty. They're not meant to be strong at all, just entry-level abilities. I think it's also important to highlight basic taijutsu and genjutsu in this simple jutsu category. Because part 1 of canon hyperfixates on ninjutsu, and then part 2 hyperfixates on taijutsu, we never really get a fair balance of these three types. And for the role of a ninja who's meant to be deceptive, we need to have everyone know the basics of genjutsu as well as martial arts. Obviously all of our characters know taijutsu, but what if there were schools of martial arts? This way, Rock Lee's Leaf Hurricane could really shine as this outlying cool ability belonging to a difficult to master school. I think it's good to have a defensive school and an offensive school, and each would have 2 branches. Defensive would have the Crane branch, that's meant to halt an enemy in their tracks by pinning their feet and fists, or seek to put them in a submission hold. The second branch for defensive would be the Fox branch, that's meant to turn the enemy's actions against them, to waste their energy instead of yours, as this would be full of trickery. Offensive would have the Tiger branch, that is less about injuring and more about killing, as you make several powerful strikes to end a fight fast. The second branch for offensive would be the Wolf branch, that's more about whittling down the opponent and playing for time for allies to arrive. These are just world building on my part. You don't need to memorize these. When they come up again, I'll be sure to explain them again. But this allows for specialists like Rock Lee to perhaps create their own school or branch. I just think there's so much potential for world building and stuff like this. Genjutsu is so poorly explained in canon that I basically have to make up a lot of this. So if you disagree with the direction that I take Genjutsu, well, there's not much source material I can draw from. Genjutsu comes in various types. You can perform basic hand seals to conjure a quick Genjutsu. This kind of Genjutsu would be part of the simple jutsu package. This Genjutsu would not be a full illusion, instead inserting phantom objects into your surroundings, such as making a teddy bear appear on someone's desk. Out of the academy, this type of Genjutsu would be taught for the purpose of distraction, such as pulling the attention of a patrolling enemy ninja so that you could create a blind spot for allies. Now then, let's get into the complex jutsu. Edo Tensei. This ability broke Naruto. So I'm not going to axe it, but I'm going to put a lot of limiters on it. In both my comments and Reddit, and even the wiki itself, there seems to be a lot of disagreement as to this ability's power range, so I'm just going to lay it all out flat. First, those resurrected via the Edo Tensei do not have infinite chakra, though they do still regenerate from nearly any damage. In fact, they will only have half of the chakra they had in life. They're also extremely lethargic. The more powerful they were in life, the more clear their thoughts are in undeath. A fodder ninja would be unable to form sentences and would be a zombie in the user's complete control. Hashirama would remember who he is, how he died, his family, etc., but he would have troubles with short-term memory and his attention span. Basically, it's a forbidden jutsu because it can cause mayhem if used on a grand scale, but the revived are never as strong as they were in life. This would probably be a lighter cost jutsu, but still come in around 10 Raikiri. For a complex jutsu, I'd wager that's a pretty cheap one. Flying Raijin, or Flying Thunder God. As covered in my previous video, this is now a Hiden technique of the Namikaze clan. When I made the decision to make it a Hiden technique, I drew inspiration first from Shikamaru's development of his Shadow Possession Jutsu. He's a really good mile marker for ability development because he goes from sort of a one-trick pony in part 1 to this super diverse I can do anything with the same jutsu. So what if the Flying Thunder God had varying abilities of advancement, shall we say? What if Minato can do what would be considered a master class of talent with the ability? What Naruto can do from the story's start is going to pale in comparison. As we go through the story, I'll definitely highlight the varying levels of skill with this ability, but I will say that the mark that Minato put on objects and people is now timed. He can put the mark wherever he wants, but it will dissolve. There are 2 exceptions. If he puts the mark into a scroll, the scroll will hold on to the mark. He has special kunai provided by his clan that also hold on to the mark. These kunai are very much like the chakra blades that Asuma has. They're designed to hold chakra type abilities. However, everything else will essentially have a 1-minute timer on it. Like when he marked Obito in canon, he would have to perform his counter fast, lest the mark drop off and he be caught with his pants down. This is probably one Raikiri, but its function is for frequent use. In this way, Minato can use it a lot without taxation, and Naruto wouldn't be able to at first. In response to Azur's question about Tobirama killing Izuna without the Flying Thunder God technique, I don't want this to sound ham-fisted, but Tobirama essentially used the body flicker technique. I know their uses are distinctly different, but at the end of the day, I'm okay with Tobirama just being a badass, because he's my favorite Hokage. Before this goes on too long, because I underestimated how much I have to say, let's cover 2 more things. 8 gates. In canon, the 8 gates limit the flow of chakra in your body, such that once released, you will eventually be able to use 100% of your full potential. Instead, I want to change this to the 8 gates make your body far more efficient with its chakra. This might sound like splitting hairs, but I think the wording is extremely important. When Guy goes to 8 gates, he becomes a total freakish, unstoppable monster. This implies that every single person has an insane amount of power within them? I'm okay with the insane power bit, but I'm not okay with the idea that it's just sitting sealed away inside of you the whole time you're alive. But if your chakra network becomes exponentially more efficient with chakra, then it wouldn't matter how strong or weak you were to start out with. Instead of the claim that your chakra is sealed away, it's the claim that we can't consciously use our chakra so efficiently. At least in this way, we would have less of a guessing game of how strong someone is, and more of a guessing game of how much chakra control they have. I imagine the 8 gates would add yet another modifier to my Raikiri scale. X Raikiri plus or times Y control times Z gates equals true power. If it wasn't apparent already, I really like having an exact idea of someone's power. To know exactly how much someone is capable of from an audience perspective can really create a lot of tension in high conflict situations where you know they might actually run out of chakra, instead of the show just telling us that they're ambiguously low on chakra. One feels real, the other sounds like a cop-out. Additionally, though the 8 gates allow more chakra in a sense, in terms of difficulty, I'd argue that it ranks up exponentially. First gate may only be about 3 Raikiri in difficulty, while the second gate is closer to 8, and the 8th gate is probably around 100 Raikiri. In fact, let's set 100 as the maximum base cost or difficulty for the Raikiri scale. Finally, I need to talk about the ever-popular Eye Dojutsu. First, let's discuss how eyes work in general in my rewrite. An Uchiha is the source of power for the Sharingan, just as a Hyuga is the source for the Byakugan. What this means is if you are an Uchiha and someone in a fight takes out your right eye, you now only have 1 Sharingan left. But if you got an eye transplant from a normal person on the street, that normal eye would develop into a second Sharingan for you. In this way, you could technically make a bunch of Sharingan just by cultivating eyes in your head until they transformed to match the power. While this is true for the Byakugan as well, it is not true for the Rinnegan. If you unlock the Rinnegan and someone takes your eyes and you get more eyes put in there, they will develop into your familial Dojutsu, not the Rinnegan. I want to thank Clash Blue Light for making some very interesting suggestions for changes to the Sharingan. They've been an active person in the comments, and though I didn't copy their suggestion directly, they will definitely find where I've been inspired. Sharingan! I'm making this weaker! Not useless by any stretch of the imagination, so hear me out. The Sharingan can have 1 to 3 Tomo. Those are the little swirly dots on the iris. A Sharingan can only copy as many jutsu as they have Tomo. So Kakashi, the copycat ninja, can only copy 3 at a time, but he can forget any of these abilities on the fly to replace them with another ability he's observing in the moment. The reason why Kakashi is labeled the copycat ninja in my rewrite is because he has a nearly perfect photographic memory, and so on top of the Sharingan advantage, he just remembers a lot of combined hand seals. What does it mean to copy in the context of the Sharingan? Well, it means they don't have to perform hand seals for the copied ability. It still costs them equal chakra, but it acts as an instant technique for them. It can still have the ability for a few seconds of future sight, as well as instinctive reaction times, but the Sharingan can no longer see chakra or its color. It is an Ido Jutsu that masters the physically seen world, while the Byakugan masters the unseen world of chakra. The Sharingan can also no longer see through Genjutsu, though they can still create it. The copied abilities are restricted to the simple jutsu and some medium class jutsu. I'm thinking C rank or B rank. Mangekyo Sharingan. I'm making this weaker! Just hold on, there's a rhyme to all my reasons. The Mangekyo can store one complex jutsu at a time per eye, in addition to all the features of the base Sharingan. So instead of having those crazy game-breaking jutsu that are all exclusive to the Sharingan eye, we're going to simply have the Mangekyo gain the speed advantage when it comes to conjuring jutsu in combat. However, the Mangekyo no longer has power. In canon, Obito's left eye has the same ability as his right eye. It doesn't matter if that left eye is in Kakashi's head, or in Naruto's, or in Tsunade's. It's still going to have the same power. In my rewrite, it's the person that has the power. So Kakashi still has Kamui, but if his Mangekyo found itself in someone else's head, it would no longer grant Kamui. Instead, it would grant a power unique to that person. Also, blindness is no longer a threat. And yes, it does get better. Eternal Mangekyo. You might be thinking that this no longer has any point if the user can't go blind. It is the Eternal Mangekyo for a reason, after all. This grants one additional ability that is unique to the person. However, if a non-Uchiha with the Mangekyo gave their eye to their brother, nothing would happen. The Eternal Mangekyo can only be unlocked by an Uchiha taking eyes from another. Also, it doesn't require taking eyes from your brother. Instead, you can take eyes from any clansmate. Once unlocked, if you somehow manage to steal it, you would have an Eternal. Byakugan. I'm making this considerably stronger. The Byakugan is immune to most types of Genjutsu. This is now way more focused on chakra. Gentle Palm now works in two ways. It seals chakra points to shut down an opponent. It also absorbs chakra natures so that the user can adapt to and realize the element. The Byakugan can now see colors of chakra that match with chakra natures so that they can specifically target these elements to shut down specialized jutsu and absorb the nature itself. It's an expectation within the main branch to attain all 5 chakra elements before reaching Jonin rank. I know it sounds insane. I want the Sharingan and Byakugan to both be relevant to what the Rinnegan is, and this is partially my answer. But wait, my Byakugan has an evolution. Like the Mangekyo, and in keeping with Japanese names, I present Hageshi Byakugan. Hageshi basically means intense. So let's talk about it. The Hyuga and Uchiha are against each other in more ways than one. I want to keep its activation requirements a secret to be revealed later. But I will talk about what this new eye can do. The Hageshi permanently turns on the Byakugan with no chakra drain. However, its range slowly expands indefinitely. This gradual growth to the infinite often drives anyone who unlocks this insane, or even to suicide from the sensory overload. I mean, heck, they can't even close their eyes to escape the all-seeing nature. However, due to its ever-growing power, the user then also becomes able to see jutsu forming within the body before a hand seal even takes place. In a sense, they can see things before they happen, but it's not future sight. Like the Uchiha, the Hyuga used to have a tablet containing the secrets to unlocking this ability, but due to unknown reasons that tablet has been lost to time. If the Hageshi Byakugan meets a Mangekyo Sharingan, the Byakugan can see the abilities stored in the Sharingan's eyes. Can't cancel them, but they know they're there. Meanwhile, the copying nature of the Sharingan would allow the Mangekyo user to see chakra during this interchange. Finally, the Rinnegan. I'm not taking anything it can do in canon away. The Rinnegan has two types. The basic Rinnegan that Madara unlocked, that we see at various points in Obito and Nagato. And then the Char Rinnegan, what Hagoromo gave to Sasuke. First off, let's talk about activation. How does one attain this eye? This is no longer attained from some weird amalgamation of Hashirama's face on Madara's chest. Instead, it is attained from total mastery of one's eyes. Now, I understand this sounds like an easy thing to then master, but no living Hyuga has any idea that their eye has a next level, and due to the Uchiha massacre, its survivors aren't exactly willing to kill each other for their eyes. Not to mention their tablet says brother when it's really any clansmate, so they're additionally misled. It's going to take some investigations by some key characters to find the truth. Secondly, what's the difference between the two Rinnegan types? Heck, in canon, I have to admit, I have absolutely no idea in the whole world what the differences are between the Rinnegan, except for appearance. I always thought that Kaguya's had to be the strongest, but apparently it was just red for the sake of that hypnosis jutsu. And then I figured Sasuke's must be stronger than that basic Rinnegan because it has 6 Tomo. But then Sasuke never does anything crazy to match up pound for pound with the nutty things that Nagato did as Pain. I'm going to need the comments to help me out with this. Seriously, I searched for hours for concrete proof of some sort of power difference between their appearance, and no one anywhere seems to agree on one thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that the Byaku Rinnegan takes on one appearance, while the Char Rinnegan takes on another. Not that they're inherently different in power. And that about covers everything for today. I recognize that the Byakugan might come off as too powerful, but it's extremely difficult to train, so it won't just grant extreme power to whoever uses it. A lot of fun stuff, but I knew deep down that I couldn't cover every single jutsu. There were simply some extremely important ones that I needed to highlight and change. I didn't want to weaken anything to the point that it was a waste of time, but Edo Tensei was game-breaking. It needed some vast changes, and in my attempts to remain shrewd, I will say that every ability mentioned in this video will make at the very least a few appearances in my rewrite. Next episode will be on the 15th, and it will be the proper start to my rewrite, where we finally get to see our characters, the Konoha 12. Now we're really getting the ball rolling, and I seriously can't wait to record the next one because I'm really happy with how I've designed it. If you've hung on this long, you know what my motto is: the sky's the limit.